It is you, sir. No, it is me, sir.
No, it's you.
It is me. All right. We're just practicing for Cloud Giant talk. Hi, I'm Emmy.
And beneath the mask that I wear, I am James.
And welcome back to the Bestiary Monster Manual A through Z. And James, who are we meeting today?
They're the diplomats, the courtesans, the aristocracy of the ancient giant empire of Astoria. Today, it's second in the Ordning. It's the Cloud Giants.
Oh my, yes. The Cloud Giants are a very aristocratic society.
Fancy.
Quite such, sir. They aren't the head of the Ordning, but storm giants are so deeply rare and are so removed from the rest of giant society. They spend so little of their life interacting with even each other, let alone other giants, that it often kind of ends up being cloud giants that are there giving orders. And of all the other giants are also the most likely to go find other clans of giants and tell them what to do. Because almost everything is beneath them in their minds.
Yes, I mean, one probably wouldn't do this in the presence of a cloud giant, but one might almost call them somewhat arrogant. They are, as you say, kind of often the de facto leaders of giant culture on those rare occasions when different levels of the Ordning will interact and cooperate, because storm giants are just kind of another level entirely. Cloud giants are an interesting bunch. They're very focused on ideas of intrigue, of courtly politics, of displays of wealth, of battles not of the physically combative kind, but of wits and of wagers and of ideas and information. They're an interesting bunch.
They really are. They love games, but mostly they like winning. And they are cheats. But the thing about that is that if you are caught cheating, it is the ultimate disgrace. If you are caught cheating, it is horrible. Shame on you. But if you're not caught cheating, even if everybody kind of knows you were cheating, it's seen as a very noble thing to do. And this goes back to their god, Memnor, the trickster.
Yes, so the smartest and cleverest of all of Anam the All-Father's children, the one with the most mastery of magic, Memnor is not just clever, he is deceitful and cunning, and this has very much infused Cloud Giant society with this kind of philosophy of everybody cheats. The problem isn't that you're cheating, it's that you get caught. So very much as we've said, a society based on courtly intrigue, of seeing things as this kind of game to be played, even when it's with the lives and livelihoods of others.
All beneath them. And if you look at the art here in the book, you can really get that sense that pretty much everything is beneath this guy. I mean, I love this piece so much. It's so evocative of exactly who this cloud giant is.
Very much a sense of self-assuredness, of confidence, of, oh yes, really, kind of responses to things. One thing actually that, not so much in character or personality here, that jumps out is that when you first look at this piece, you might think, well, why does this giant have fangs? He doesn't. Those are lip rings, not fangs, and is part of this kind of display of wealth that is very much characteristic of these beings.
It took James and I entirely too long to figure that out looking at him. We were like, why does he have snake fangs? What does this have to do with anything? Like, no, they're lip rings. It's fine. But again, with that sense of displays of jewelry, of the armband, the bracelets, the lip rings, the necklace, the patterns on his vest, on his belt. Everything about him is very opulent. You can tell he's strong, but not in the same way that we look at other giants. In fact, looking at this guy, I know we've talked about how giants have fantastical proportions. This guy, to me, is the least fantastical. There's the bright blue eyes and the silvery blue skin, which is very typical of a cloud giant, but honestly, a lot about him, he looks the most humanoid.
Aside from the fact that if you put an actual humanoid just next to them, you would realize that they're very different. But just looking at this piece, they are the most arguably regular looking of all giant kind, especially with this waistcoat that is very clearly from Giant Savile Row. But there's actually a little bit of the art that is slightly inconsistent with how cloud giants are described. Cloud giants almost never, aside from their closest brethren, like their immediate families, almost never show their faces.
That's right.
They have a tradition of donning masks that are supposed to represent and communicate their general mood for the day. So again, kind of tying into that kind of aristocratic culture of old Europe that's like, oh yes, I'm going to the masquerade ball and this is the fancy mask I'm going to be wearing today.
But this also, again, goes back to Memnor, the trickster, wearing masks. It all kind of comes back to that. Once again, when we're talking about giants, you can absolutely see the influence of their gods in their lives, and that's a big part of how they live. And I know you were talking earlier about how lesser beings are often the sport of their games. They don't wage war, but they do get involved in them sometimes, mostly because they bet on them. And they're not supposed to get involved if they bet on them, but once again, they're cheats. So they might just look down at a war happening in the world below them and just decide to bet on it. You might be involved in that. How fun. How droll.
And these wagers can actually go for generations through Cloud Giant society. They might bet on something and then lose that bet, and then it kind of becomes a point of pride for the next generation in that Cloud Giant's line to try and win back what was lost with interest. And then, of course, the next generation is probably going to lose it again, and so on and so forth. But speaking of ancestral lines, Cloud Giant society, in terms of how it's formed by individuals, is probably the closest to what we might think of as the traditional idea of the nuclear family in our society. They don't form war bands as such. They don't, it's not based on prowess or anything. It's just family, mated partners, and children.
Yes, and it's very important to them, especially because usually their nuclear families who they're traveling with. Cloud giants do not generally travel in large groups because it attracts attention, and that's not usually something they want brought to them. They want to be behind the scenes quite a bit. They usually live on hilltops or very, very tall mountains as close to the sky as they can get, or very, very rarely in some of the last remnants of a story, which are the floating cloud cities that very, very rarely remain. And while cloud giants do have magic, they are innate spellcasters. It's charisma based, so it's sorcery. It's part of them. And of all the giants, they're them and the stone giants are usually the spellcasters. But for them, it's very innate. But they still can't make these cities anymore. The knowledge is gone.
Yeah, that particular ability was lost when Astoria fell, and actually many cloud giants, many of them in fact not living in the clouds anymore because they can't, are motivated by the desire to unlock that knowledge and that skill once again. And so cloud giants, apart from their fondness for intrigue and courtly politics and games and cheating, are also driven by the want or need even to acquire knowledge. They are, as well as courtesans and hangers-on and aristocrats, they are scholars and hoarders of not just material wealth but knowledge and research as well.
Yes, these things are all very, very important to cloud giants. And we were talking earlier about this. They don't form war bands. If they need something attacked or gotten for them, they're very likely to actually go bother another set of giants and go and tell them to do it because that's their preference. But I imagine because of that nature, you can fight a cloud giant. They obviously have stats here. They're challenge rating 9. They have a boulder, like all the giants. But I imagine fighting one of these is not a very common occurrence. I mean, they're very rare as it is, and they're not particularly fighty. Of all of the giants below Storm, I imagine they're probably the most likely to talk to you, maybe to hire you, maybe to trade something from you. Who's to say?
Thank you, weary travelers, for joining us once again here in the Bestiary, Monster Manual A to Z. If red sky at night is shepherd's delight and red sky in the morning is a shepherd's warning, what does it mean when a city appears in the clouds above you? Let us know in the comments down below, and while you're there you can like this video and subscribe. It does make a difference to that whole YouTube algorithm shaboodle. And while you're down there, you can also find our various social media presences, including our Patreon. And thank you again to all of our patrons who may be watching this. We really appreciate your support. Here you can check out some other videos that we've made talking about various other nerdy things, and join us next week when we discuss the Storm Giant!